I'm
Okay.
super excited to be introducing you to Christina. She is an executive with a Fortune 500 company, a publicly traded company, and she's going to be talking with us today about what somebody should be doing if they're trying to position themselves for employment. And obviously, she knows my background. She knows that I am with prison professors, and we try to create content for people in jails and prisons and returning veterans and other people who come from kind of vulnerable backgrounds. How do we get into the job market? So she can't talk about her company, but Christina, I would love it if you would just tell us a little bit about your background and your responsibilities within that company.
Okay, sure. Well, first off, thanks so much for inviting me to speak with you. I've done a little bit of research on you, and I think that everything that you're doing towards future, I'm not sure exactly how to put it, but helping others to overcome obstacles is really impressive. So it's an honor to speak with you. So thank you. For me, I work, for a large corporation, and really what my role is managing and hiring salespeople and people that go out into retail markets or deal with customers on a direct contact basis. So that's pretty much what I'm in charge of. I'm looking to coach them. I'm looking to grow them, to help them develop to next roles once they're in the position, and really just be a motivator and make sure that they are achieving the objectives that we have set.
So I'm going to ask you some very specific questions about what you are looking for in hiring a candidate. Before I get there, could you tell us a little bit about your career trajectory? Like when you came into the organization, we'd like to hear a little bit about how did you advance from starting as an entry-level employee, and how long did it take for you to rise to the level where you're overseeing entire territories over multiple states and thousands of sales professionals?
Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. So essentially, I did come in as an entry level employee. I've been with this organization for over 20 years, so it's been a trajectory of slow growth, but specifically purposed growth. I look to develop myself. So starting as a salesperson in a local market, then transitioning to a little bit of a larger market. Then I transitioned to a different role where I'm dealing specifically with customers. So I'm dealing more with customer business management, managing what their purchases are, what their marketing is, what their spend is on promotions, etc. And then I kind of took a step back and looked at where I wanted to go, because you have, kind of there's always many roads in a big company. You can go with people leadership, you can be executional, you can work with customers. So what I was lacking in my portfolio on my resume is people. I didn't have people management. So I looked for a role where I could get people management. My first one was we use brokers in some cases. So I took a role I was promoted to a role managing brokers, and I still also manage customer business. So that gave me sort of the dual experience of managing customer business and also managing people. And from there, I transitioned to just a management role where I was managing a team. And that's just pretty much what I've been doing ever since. And so, a lot of things have changed, because in an organization as large as ours, we're constantly going through changes. We're constantly looking at new ways of doing business. So titles may change, but I'm still pretty much doing the same job.
What I really like about what you just said is it aligns with what we're trying to teach in the course. And what I heard you say is that you visualize success and what you want to do with your career. You assessed your weaknesses in your resume, and you decided to turn those weaknesses into strengths. And you took the necessary steps to continue that climb so that your career would advance. And if somebody is starting inside of an institute with some baggage like I had, this is what we've got to be thinking about, is I've got to start here, and I got to start this climb one step at a time, always assessing my strengths and my weaknesses and filling those weaknesses with new strengths, or really focusing my attention on those strengths. And so I appreciate you for giving us that background. And just to give us a sense of the size of your organization, I know that you can't list its name, but could you tell us what how many employees work for your company?
Oh, well, we're a global company, so start there. So we have thousands upon thousands of employees. We have factories across the world.
So more than 10,000 employees probably
Yes.
altogether.
Yes.
So when you're with a big company like that, there are, as she said, many roads that you can take. And what's really important is to visualize, well, what road is right for you? Because if you want to be on a trajectory of like the one that Christina was on, to grow, to become a leader, a manager of other people, somebody who is driving direction of the organization, that's going to require one skill set. But some people may not want that responsibility, and they may want to train themselves just for something that's more limited. So they're working, a very set group of hours, and they have clearly defined tasks and goals. And we're going to get into that. I'm going to ask Christina about that. But that's one of the things that I heard her talking about, is really defining success and then kind of reverse engineering what she has to do to get there. And that's what all of us have to be doing. So Christina,
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
if you don't mind, I think, really what's important is in any role that you're in, and just in life in general, you have to have those same principles, because that's what gets you from point A to point Z. You have to have all those letters in between. And anyone that works for me, I have employees that work in the role, and that's what they want. They're comfortable. They're maybe not able to move. They're not able to, they've got responsibilities with families. So sometimes you just can't pick up and move, especially with a company like ours, where if you want to be promoted, you often have to move. And sometimes you just can't do that. So that's all right, because we need solid performers in the roles that we have that are in salespeople, for example. We need strong people. So there's nothing wrong with making a career out of that as well.
So helpful to us, Christina. And now a question is, I've told you that most of the people that I'm striving to teach and inspire are people that are in jails or prisons across America. And I want them to be thinking not about the struggles that they're going through right now at the given moment, or even their past decisions that led them to this current situation, but rather where they want to go. And with regard to an organization like yours, a global corporation with more than 10,000 people, what challenges are they going to face if they try to get hired with a company like yours?
Well, I'm very familiar with my segment of the business. So, as far as the whole company, there might be different rules, but within my job, the challenges that would come up, and I think it's pretty common, is that we do background checks. So that's very common. We do a very thorough background check. So anybody that we go through an interview process with, we ask them to submit. Once we've found the right person and we're selected this candidate for a particular role, then they have to go through the whole background check, basically. And that involves providing, your detailed information, your answering questions about whether or not you've had a federal, if you've been arrested, normal things that would be on any application. It's been a long time since I've looked at one, so forgive me. But so, I've had people that have been excellent candidates, and unfortunately we found out, for example, they had a DUI 15 years ago, and we couldn't have them in the role. And I really tried to get them, but unfortunately the role that we were hiring for required them to drive. So the risk was just too high. We couldn't take that chance. Our company didn't feel that was a possibility to have them in the role. So unfortunately we had to say no to that candidate, which was qualified. But I know that if in other situations, so in my area, it might be challenging for me to hire someone with a background that is, how do you say?
Well, somebody that has a felony background. I mean, we just got to be open. The country right now, we have this issue with mass incarceration, and there are, tens of millions of people that have a felony background. Now, my experience has been that if I develop a very strong skill set, I am able to overcome those barriers, even with a company like yours. And then maybe I can't get a role in finance or in working and handling, consumers' financial data if I'm working with a publicly traded company like yours. But when I'm dealing with a CEO or a C-suite executive, I have found that they have had the discretion to, in this role, I always want you with our organization. Have you ever seen a situation where somebody at a high level, at a C-suite level, a chief officer has the ability?
Actually, something just came to mind. This is a great example. So within our company, one of the things that we do is we're constantly looking to develop our entire organization. Self-development, constantly learning to look, to challenge ourselves, to push ourselves to grow, whether it be it's personal and it's professional because the two are tied hand in hand. So we hired this company that was specifically to help people focus on how they develop themselves and what you need to do. Really, it's all about sort of looking at yourself in the mirror and owning your own development, your growth. And after the whole thing was over, we probably used in 2 or 3 meetings over the course of 4 years or so. I don't remember the name of the program. But the gentleman that ran it and stood in front of thousands of people and for years in a row, he actually had a criminal background. Now that you think about it, he didn't work directly for us, but he was hired by our company because he had really overcome his obstacles, and he became sort of like you. He's really just developed himself. He's articulate. He can speak. He's passionate. He was able to get up on stage and just motivate people and show how you can overcome pretty much anything, if you put your mind to it. But again, all that comes with a plan in place and knowing where you need to be and owning it. Because if you don't own it, then you can't. You'll never achieve it.
So that's such a great point, and I'm so thankful to you for bringing that up, because a lot of times people who are living in jail or prison, all they see are the obstacles. Like I could hear people, I could actually see people probably, even though I'm not there, see people tuning out when you just said, oh, we can't get them hired because of DWI 15 years ago. They're immediately saying, oh God, well, what's the use? I can't do anything then. But that's not accurate. The reality is, to the extent that an individual looks at his own life and says, I am going to be the CEO of my own life, I'm going to say, okay, what's the problem? How am I going to work my pathway to that problem? What skill sets am I going to develop along the way? And that's the way that I crush, objections in life. And like Christina just told us, it's through life. It's not only in the career track, and we want to help people reach their highest potential. So thank you so much for giving us those examples. I can assure the group that I will be bringing you real life examples of people that have done that. In fact, in our course, you see me interviewing people that have overcome enormous obstacles to become, despite a felony record, to become lawyers, to become physicians, to become finance guys, to become entrepreneurs. You can do anything if you follow this path. And Christina, you have spoken with us a little bit, or spoken with me during our pre-call, about some of the things that you are looking for. And one of them happens to be precisely something that I teach in our goals module. And you said that you're looking for this in a candidate. And I would love it if you would talk with us a little bit about what you meant when you described goals.
Well, how would you mean, personal goals or
well, you used an acronym that we also use in our course when you said you're looking to see how somebody talks about their goals.
Oh, okay.
And that acronym is the same one that we touch. I don't want to say it on camera. I want you to say it.
So I hope I get it right. I hope I get it right, because I'm thinking of two. So anytime you write a goal, you have to think about, you can make a goal. Anybody can say, I want to do something, but if you don't have it kind of precisely what you want to do, you're never going to achieve it. So what we use is the acronym of SMART. Is that what you're thinking of?
That is precisely, because we teach that in the course. What you just said is exactly. A lot of people say, well, I get out where I start, I'm going to be very successful, right? And they think that's a goal. But the reality is that's a lot of happy talk, right? It's not something that you can execute on. Right. And so I want you, as a validated, authentic person who is in charge of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars in revenues, to talk about what are you looking for when you're listening to somebody talk about goals. I want you to tell us what you, as a decision maker, are looking to hear.
So, there's kind of two sides. So if you're talking about when I interview somebody and I'm looking to see, what does this person bring to the table and how are they going to fit in my organization? So using the SMART acronym, I really need, what they're saying to be specific. What do they want? Is it clear? Do they know what they want? And then additionally, I look for, is it measurable? Because that means, can they say they did it, or is it not clear? Is it just sort of gray? Is it actionable? What are their plans that they want to take to get and achieve that goal? Is it realistic? You can say, oh, I want to be CEO in 5 years. Is that really realistic? It's not really realistic, right? So you've got to have some experience. And then is it time bound? So each portion of your goal, whatever it may be, personal, professional, has to have some, I call them benchmarks. So every time I speak to my employees, I ask them to give me we do our business in cycles. So I want a cycle plan, and I want to see that it's specifically SMART. Because if it's not, I send it back to them. And I say, you know what, you can say you're going to do this, but you're not telling me how you're going to do it. I need to know how you're going to do it. Oh, I'm going to focus on X, Y, and Z. Well, what does that mean? And why are you focusing on that? And how are you going to measure that you actually are achieving what you need to do? So benchmarks are something that you put in place. And additionally, I will tell you this is really important for me. People need to have a goal, but I also want to make sure that they have a stretch goal. So a stretch goal is really important because I don't want you just to achieve your goal, and I don't want you to achieve your goal on the date that it's due, right at 3 o'clock when I said it was due. I want your goal to be achieved a week early, and I want you to achieve at least 5% over. That's what they say, like if if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late, right? So you've got to be on time. You've got to have a plan in place to win, not just to win what's expected, but to overachieve it. And frankly, that's really the only way that you really stand out in a big company like this. This is a huge organization. How do you stand out? You stand out by making your goals. You stand out by making sure you're sharing information. You stand out by articulating yourself and speaking up and just really being somebody that is a star out there. That's really what shines.
So you mentioned STAR, and we're going to get to that, but I just want to reiterate a little bit about what you just said with regard to SMART goals, because that we do teach on that, but it's really important for me to drive that home with real life executives and decision makers like you, Christina, who's helping me convey, and you're validating. And I want to thank you for being specific on that. And if you're watching this video inside of a jail or a prison or in any type of environment where you're living in struggle, I want you to hear what Christina just said. It's not just in your career, but it's in your personal life as well. You want to be this type of well-rounded, developed individual that knows how to think differently from people who are not so developed in critical thinking skills. There's a risk or a danger that Michelangelo, the famous artist from the Renaissance era, spoke about. And he spoke about goals, but I'll always remember one of the lessons that he gave us. And he said that the danger with setting goals is not that you set goals that are too high and you never reach them. What Christina spoke about are the stretch goals. The danger is that you set goals of mediocrity and you hit them and you think that's all I have to do. Oh, I've succeeded. But if you really want to advance your life and crush things, you have to be this person that's saying, I'm always looking ahead. And that has been an enormous resource in helping me overcome 26 years in prison and being able to even get on the phone with high-level executives like Christina, who's giving us her time when she doesn't have to do it. She's doing it from home during this, I'm just so grateful to you for giving us your time, Christina. And now, because I know your time's so valuable, I would like very much if we could transition into that other acronym, which generally I learned from you, and so I'm thankful to you for teaching it to us. It's a little bit of secret sauce that you are looking for during the interview technique, and you called it STAR. And could you walk us through what STAR means? And then I'd love to do like an example of it if we could. So first of all, why don't you explain it?
Okay, so STAR, in any interview, you're going to be asked questions, and we always use the same set of questions for every single applicant. So we are very fair and equitable across the board. So how do we differentiate people? Well, when someone answers a question, what I'm looking for is for them to answer it to provide me the STAR method. Can they answer this question using the STAR method? So that means...
And stop right there for a second, because they don't know what the STAR method is when they go into this. You are looking to assess how they think. So like you might be going into a job and you don't know that she's judging you based on this STAR method, which she's going to describe. But if you can do that, you really elevate yourself as a candidate. That's what I learned from listening to Christina. And so I'd just like you to be clear on that the person doesn't come in and know they're being assessed on STAR, but you as a decision maker are assessing them. And if I'm right, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, you are right. So STAR really is, can this person, whatever the question is, to describe the situation. So, we always say, tell me about a time, what happened here. So they have to describe the situation to be able to define a clear situation of what they're talking about. And then what was the task that needed to be done in order to overcome that situation? Then what was the actions that they did that helped them achieve and, the result that they're looking for? And then the R is, again, the results. So it's situation, task, actions, results. If you can do that in a concise manner, you're going to be good. And I'll give you a secret. So I've been in this role for a while, but, sometimes I interview for other positions, and I'm always looking to see how I can continue to grow. So what I do when I go into any interview is I'll think about the questions that I'm going to assume they're going to ask me. And what I do is I think about situations or examples. And those examples in my head, maybe I'll have like 5 or 6 good examples of stuff that's happened to me throughout my career. Something that could apply to different things. But each example can be tied to whatever question you want. You just have to think about it in the way that you can say and make it fit, like customize it to fit the question. So I hope I'm not confusing you, but it's really important because you can be overwhelmed in an interview. And if you can get some great examples in your head of how you overcame something and what you did and the result of it, you can pretty much apply that example to any question. You just have to be able to fix it. Okay.
Well, I would just say right there, Christina, what you just gave us is an example of STAR. Okay. You're thinking about an interview. Okay. Mm-hmm. You're thinking about, well, what are the tasks that I got to do? I got to immediately, before I go to that interview, position myself because I know it's going to be overwhelming. And so the actions that I'm going to do, I'm going to be thinking about how I'm preparing myself so that I can really outperform or over deliver. And the result is I advanced my career. So it sounds like you just gave me an example of how you used STAR in even advancing your own career and going into an interview.
Yes. So there's 2 sides to this STAR as well. So it depends. If I'm interviewing an outside candidate, someone that's not an internal candidate for a role within our organization, I may not measure them as much on the STAR method, but they should be able to provide specific examples. You never want to go to an interview and have a question where they say, oh, what XYZ, and the person just is like, and they just think and they can't have anything. You've got to think about when you go to an interview that you own the preparation. You own knowing what that role is. You own researching that organization so that you can ask questions, because at the end of every interview, I'll always give that candidate time to ask me questions. I always do that, because here, and you know what? To me, if someone doesn't have questions in mind that are thought out, that's already like, I already think about that as like, this person didn't really want this job that much. They didn't take the time to understand our products. They didn't take the time to understand, what we do, who we sell to, or, questions that are meaningful. So how bad can they really want it if they didn't really take the time to prepare?
So excellent advice. And I would certainly give somebody who's sitting inside of a jail or a prison to be thinking right now, not about the challenges that you are facing where you are, but how are you going to be very well positioned, or how could you be very well positioned to go to an interview with an experienced executive like Christina, who is going to be listening to every word that I say and be assessing and judging me and weighing me whether I am a worthy candidate of coming to become a member of her team. And Christina, maybe you could give us an example of, or you might want to interview me, like a mock interview right here of what I would do. You could ask me, and I'm just gonna wing it here, but I'm going to show you how I would answer those questions. So Let's go forward, Christina.
I had a feeling we were going to do this, so I'm excited. So I actually have some questions that are real questions. Okay, these are real questions. So
Great.
Let me think about this. All right, here's a good one. So, Michael, tell me about a time when you've resolved a situation by being creative.
I love that question, and I'm going to tell you the situations so that you can kind of understand the context. Here's the reality, and you're going to find this out in my background, so I want to explain it from the very beginning. I'm a guy who made a lot of really bad decisions when I was young, and as a result of those bad decisions, I went to prison for a very long time. And I started thinking about, okay, I've made some bad decisions. How can I create some value here and do the best that I can with my life? And so I started thinking about people just like you, Christina. Many, many years ago, I started thinking about what could I do to overcome my background? And that background that says, well, it's not important what I want. What is the person that I'm going to meet want? And they're going to want me to focus on education. They're going to want me to focus on contributing to society in meaningful, measurable ways. And they're going to want me to build a strong support network. And I think you're going to see that in my resume, that I've worked really hard to do that. by figuring out a way to earn an undergraduate degree and a master's degree under the most difficult circumstances possible. Number two, I figured out a way to develop my communication skills so that I could become an author. And number three, by doing that, I built a massive support network. And what you're going to see, the results of that, Christina, are that when I come to work for an organization like yours, I am going to be able to think critically outside of the box and deploy all of the resources that I have developed to bring us more markets, to help more people achieve their highest potential. And that's why I'm just so confident that I can bring enormous value to this organization. And I really hope that we'll have an opportunity to elaborate on that as we continue with this interview.
Very good. Yeah, you covered off all the basics. You talked about your decisions that you made that were bad. So that was a situation. Your task was to overcome that. The actions were the education, the network that you had to contribute to society, and the results are now that you have achieved all of that. So fantastic. Great answer.
So what I want you in the jail to be understanding is, you notice I didn't hide from my background. I didn't cringe in weakness when she asked me about it. I was open and transparent. But I want you to remember, had I not started preparing when I was at the earliest stage of my journey inside of a jail, I would not have that level of confidence or that level of clarity. So I want you to be thinking today, or my recommendation is that today you begin thinking about, someday I'm going to sit across the table from somebody like Christina who's going to be judging me and weighing me. And what you really want to do is disrupt that mindset, because as soon as I said I was in prison for a long time, I know immediately, what? She probably got it. But if you can overcome it, they start thinking about, hey, we have a role for somebody like this. And that's what I want you to be positioning yourself for if you're going through this course. So I thank you so much for giving us that real life example, Christina. And of course, I feel very confident I could answer any of those questions. Maybe some hiring people would not want to move forward with me, but there will be some that do. And it's all predicated on the decisions that we start making at the earliest start, with our goals, our preparations, the priorities that we are taking, and that's what puts us on this path. Now, Christina, I know we're getting to the end of our time together, so I want to transition to this other area where you told me that you have a very strong role, and that's in coaching your team into personal development. Could you tell us a little bit about your process? Because these people with whom I'm working, they need to be on a self-directed personal development plan. And I think we can all learn from leaders like you.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, development is ongoing. It's a lifetime journey, development. You should constantly be looking to develop and grow. And when you work for a company like ours, we expect, and we actually provide the tools to help people develop. And it's actually part of an annual goal. So we expect for people to put some goals together. I expect for everybody to do 2 goals that are for their current role and 1 goal that's potentially for a future role, so that they're always looking to stretch themselves. And then part of that is we kind of break it down into a 70-20-10. So 70 is actions that you're going to do. So these are the things that I'm going to do. And I don't want to see you get overwhelmed by it by making it too complex. It should be very specific, just the same thing as the SMART. They all have to be written in SMART method. So you want 70% of it to be actionable. Then 20% of it should come from peers, learning from others. So you learn by doing, you learn something by others, and then 10% could be something that you learn where you take a class, you read a book, you take an online course, something like that. That's pretty much how we write our goals. And then, I just want them to be very clear. I want them to be concise. They have to be able to tie into, is this for your current role? Is this for a future role? Some of it might even be personal, and you might even work on developmental goals that are the same over and over. And at some point you have to say, well, maybe you've reached the limit on, that you handling objections. Maybe you just can't handle objections. That's something you're constantly trying to overcome is objections. So I hope I'm answering that question the right way. I kind of went off on a tangent.
You are actually, in fact, you've brought in some additional areas that I want to just clarify on, and then I'm going to ask you about those different questions that you told me about earlier
Okay.
What do you want to get out of this role, and those different
Okay.
types of, but before I do that, I want to, because you just gave me something new, that's 70-20-10, and I want to make sure I'm very clear on that, because I want to develop that in the course for our team. You said 70-20-10. Could you again elaborate on the what is 7? You're looking for something in the 70% category, 20%, and 10%.
Okay, yeah. So there's been studies that show that people really learn by doing. So we want, when you make a goal, we look for your goal to be broken down into 3 portions. 70% in doing. What are you going to do to help you achieve this goal? And, put some bullet points together. 20% is we learn from others. So like you're sitting here learning from me, this might be 20% of your goal. I'm learning from you. So 20%, I'm spending this time, I'm talking to you, I'm going to reach out to peers, I'm going to get feedback, and so forth. Then 10%, I'm going to specifically dedicate to some sort of subject matter where I learn online. I read a book, I watch a program, I take a course, something like that. 10% from that. But we really learn from doing. That's how you learn,
Really
Immersion.
love that advice, and you're absolutely correct. I did learn from you just by giving them that guidance. So if I were in a jail or a prison, I can tell you how I would take that information and process it. What am I doing right now to advance my skill set? That's something that you could be asking yourself wherever you are. What are you doing, right? Did I identify a series of books on a specific domain or area that I want to master, right? It might be just taking a GED book and mastering algebra. Okay, I'm going to do it every day, and I'm going to measure it. Okay, that's one thing I can do. I want to put 70% of my time in that. Then I want to take 20% of my time and say, what can I learn from somebody else? Whether it is through these videos, like I just learned from Christina. She gave me real good guidance that I am going to implement in my own life. So that's 20% of my time I'm going to take by learning from leaders or even the people that are around you. Maybe it's the staff members that are there. What are they doing to develop their careers? How can I use that in my own personal development? And then 10%, I might specifically learn a new task. And I might take some very specific efforts with 10% of my time to develop this area. So I really want to thank you for that. And I want to ask you now those questions that you asked when you're looking at coaching, and to prompt you. I remember one of the ones that I really liked is, what do you want to get out of this? And could you give us the examples of some of those personal development questions are, and what you're assessing when you listen to the candidate's response?
So essentially, and this isn't me. I mean, I've had many years of experience, but this is all from courses that I've taken and so forth, and I really implement the knowledge that I've learned. So performance coaching questions, I'll always ask somebody I want to know, and I want them to think about these things. What do you want to get out of this? What do you want to get out of our time together? So let me just kind of segue. As a manager of people, one of the things that I do is I do one-on-one time with them. So I schedule one-on-ones with each one of my employees, and I do it bi-weekly. But I don't own that content. I expect for them to come to the table with the content, to them to provide me the agenda. Because it's not, I'm doing this for them. And you got to look at it. There's 2 ways to look at it. You could look at this, the employee could look at this as like, oh, this is a hassle. I have to have a conversation with my boss every 2 weeks, and it's check the box. Or you could look at it, what do I want to get out of this? So by me giving and delegating that task to them of saying, you know what, you own this agenda, then they have to come to me. And I even say, you know what, if you have nothing to bring, you can cancel the call. But I'll always be kind of in the back of my head measuring if they cancel it, because really it's specific time one-on-one with me that you can talk about your development goals, you can talk about your objectives, whatever. So I want to know, what do they want to get out of this? And they own that. You own that. So it's just like your own personal goals. Things that I'll ask also when I'm giving coaching questions, like what are the strengths that you can leverage? So one of the things I do as a manager of a team of people is I personally will assess the strengths of everybody, by working with them, by talking to them, by seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis. Second, I'll ask them to self-assess themselves. What do you think your strengths are? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So I take that information, I put it together kind of in a graph of people, of the whole team, and I'll say, okay, so-and-so here is really great at, developing presentations. They're excellent at those presentation skills, but this person might not be. So we create links because we're always looking to help each other. And you cannot be a master of all trades. You should be good at, some things. So you use that development to figure out what you want to learn, or you can also make a development plan on maybe you're really good at something. Maybe you, like you said, you want to just sort of stay in that role. You're really great at the salesperson, comfortable here, I want to be in this role. So, but that doesn't mean you don't want to develop any further. It doesn't mean you don't have something to offer. So maybe you make a development goal that's, here's what I'm really great at, and I want to be the kind of the category captain of that particular thing. So when someone has a question on that, they can come to me. So I'm going to lead it. I'm going to be the leadership on this particular item or subject. So I'm all over the place again, but we do so many things, and I get really passionate about it because it's a lot of fun to work with people and to help them develop. And it's also just very exciting to help them kind of hone what they want to do and put their thoughts into focus, which a lot of people don't know how to do. So
a lot to learn from what you just offered us, Christina, and that is very specific in the sense that she is suggesting that in every area of our life, we want to be so deliberate. We want to convince the people that in front of us that we've really given a lot of thought. We didn't move towards success in a haphazard manner, but rather we defined it. We created a plan to get there. We knew how to put priorities in place, and we knew how to execute. And to the extent that we can do that, we can overcome the obstacles that really make it difficult or hinder a lot of people getting into the job market, much less advancing. And one of the other areas that I really noticed in Christina's questions that I would like you to be aware of as well is that there were no right or wrong answers. She was not as interested in it being right or wrong, but rather how well you can articulate what you're doing and the reasons behind it. So always be thinking that you've got to develop your communication skills, your critical thinking skills, and you want to use these very excellent tactics that Christina described, the SMART goals method, the STAR method of identifying the situation, creating the tasks, being action-oriented, defining the results, and then being able to move your way through with like an athleticism, a mental athleticism that you can adjust and pivot, like if you're a running back, and you see a hole open here, you got to be able to move.
You just brought up something that is, we use so many different tools in working with people. When you have a goal in place, and you've identified it and you've defined it and you have a project that you want to do, you always need to make sure you have the steps in place to achieve it. But you also have to prioritize because not all steps are equal. Something might be more important than others. And you also need to consistently assess and reassess because you might set out and say, I can do this. I'm going to achieve this. And you put a plan in place and you start working it and you realize that might have been too aggressive or it might have been too not enough, right? Maybe you're just slamming through it. So you want to make sure that you're constantly assessing it because goals, to me, any goal that you have, I always call it like it's a living and breathing thing. You change it and you assess it, you reevaluate it, and you make changes as needed because your ultimate goal might be the end result. But the process to get there and the priorities shift and the dynamics and all the stuff that you're doing to get there will change. And you need to be able to manipulate yourself and move as, to be more swift and to get to the level that you want to.
Excellent advice, Christina. It's this is your personal time, and you've taken the time to share it with us so that we can bring this valuable information to people who are living in jails and prisons, and it's going to be a part of our course. And I just want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I'm not able to give you any compensation or any reward for what you're doing. My gratitude is that we're going to spread your message of personal development and leadership to people who need it. And I really want to thank you for giving us your time.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm here always. Feel free to call me anytime.
Great. I'll be sending you a proposal that I can come and coach your team really soon.
Excellent. All right then.
All right. Thanks so much. And we'll be back with another inspiring guest very soon. Thank you.
Take care.